You're online. Nadia, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. So we continue our series of events with Startup Leaders Club online panel discussion by inspirational leaders of innovation and drivers of change. And today we address our topic of Global Crisis 2020 as a fast track to the new reality, disrupting industries, creating new business models, and finding new opportunities in crisis. So our today's speakers include myself as a co-moderator. I'm an independent director of the National Alternative Investment Management Association and advisor to the leading GPs, including Da Vinci Fund. And my co-moderator, Gianpaolo Parigi, he's a venture investor and chair of Single Investment Office. And our speakers today include Dr. Jack Kramer, a founder of medical director of Center for Health and Human Performance. Sam Kleinman, Future of Entertainment Consulting of Flixu Studios. Antoine Desieux, co-founder of Doctrine, and Cheryl Nge, digital marketing of Good Time. So, and I pass the floor to Gianpaolo Parigi to address a couple of new topics.
Good morning, good day, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. My name is Gianpaolo Parigi, co-moderator in this interesting panel. I'm a venture capitalist, the chairman of a single family office and a serial entrepreneur. And today we have quite an interesting panel. We'll hear views that are entrepreneurial, technical, scientific, and futuristic. So without further ado, I would leave the floor to our first guest, Dr. Jack Kramer. Jack.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good afternoon from London. So my background is I'm a physician for the last 2 decades, been involved in medical technology since before I went to medical school 3 decades ago. I have had a parallel career in extreme environments and human performance medicine, together with a number of startups which have mainly orientated around the use of data and then making better earlier decisions for medical practitioners or patients themselves. I spend about a third of my time in clinical practice at my center, at my institute in London, a third of my time in policy and charity work in basically breakthrough medical technologies, and a third of my time as a venture partner in charge of life sciences and health technologies at Mosaic Ventures in London, a Series A fund. That's me.
Thank you so much, Jack. And I pass the floor to Antoine. Would you also introduce yourself?
Hey, so thank you so much for inviting me first, and hi everybody. So my name is Antoine and I'm the co-founder of Doctrine. So Doctrine is a legal information platform. So we built this platform to help our customers who are lawyers to navigate through the law, through legislation, court decisions. We raised a total of euro 10 million. And we are based in France and target the French legal market. So it's a really traditional and conservative market segment. And it's interesting how the crisis disrupted that traditional market. And as a side note, my background is originally in biomedical engineering. So I also have some insight on this crisis, I would say.
Thank you, Antoine. And Sam, could you also join us?
Yes, hello, I'm Sam Oshmuel, and we are in the entertainment business. The name of our company is Flixu Limited, and we specialize in distributing films, and our other specialty is the future and monetization of movies. It's a big business, and the movie business is very backwards in technology in many ways. And we specialize in inventing things that will increase the monetization of films and also music. Right now, as we all know, we're going through a huge transformation of situation. And basically, part of the business has been wiped out, which is the theater going. So there's huge opportunities for the future in making money in the movie business, but in a totally different way. I see this wave as a huge wave, similar to DVD or digital. It's a brand new situation.
Thank you so much, Sam and Cheryl.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Cheryl, digital marketer at Good Time. So Good Time is based in San Francisco, and we're an interview scheduling software for recruiting teams like Airbnb, Dropbox, and more. So I'm very happy to be joining everybody in this panel to talk about the current pandemic and how it sort of like evolves and changes things around. Especially like in the tech space, like this is interesting because it's never seen before, and a lot of things have to be adjusted. Like I feel like in a startup, what you really have is the flexibility to change really quickly, and whatever changes that you make right now is gonna make or break the company. So this is gonna be fun. I'm excited.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And Jack, what new challenges and opportunities do you find now in the current situation? We just don't hear you. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, yeah, it's my goodness. If you ask me how every aspect of my life was going to change in the next 4 weeks ago, in the following 4 weeks till now, I would not have been able to predict it. I've gone from basically looking after athletes and cancer patients, trying to get them through very tough challenges, to having 1,000 new patients with COVID and 5 on ICU right now. And, it's, I've suddenly, part of my life, I've just literally gone from being one type of specialist to being quite another. And we've seen a massive shift in healthcare from having in the UK a national health service to having a national COVID service, a complete freezing of every other service, at least in its capacity, if not in its capability, for the foreseeable future. Collateral damage, which I think will far exceed the actual frontline losses, both in direct losses from people not being able to have operations, through to the social and psychological impact of isolation and economic shrinkage. And that's just the medical side of my life, let alone the business technology side of it. On the business and technology side, it again, would 4 weeks ago we'd have known what was going to happen now? No. This is a huge change. Many companies who were outstanding and about to make fund returners have gone to zero. Others have suddenly pivoted to create the most astonishing innovations you can imagine, which might be short-lived, which might be sustained through the transition, and might end up in the long term being extraordinary businesses which literally were created in the last 4 weeks on the basis of something else they were doing. A little bit like Shmuel was saying, it's like a huge opportunity. Cheryl's very excited. I'm not sure if I would actually go so far as say I'm like jumping up and down for joy about what's going on, but I certainly think that necessity has forced the most extraordinary innovation that we've seen in medicine, in research, at the coalface of dealing with COVID, and then in technology and in companies, how they respond. And it's really sorting out the wood from the trees. The area that I'm most interested in is specifically in how the general trend towards optimizing expensive and rare people's time, like clinicians, can be assisted with technology, and how we can dematerialize and decentralize a lot of what we do away from hospitals themselves. That has always been a bit of a trend. It is exponentially accelerated. And I would argue if we don't put some of those things into place now, we won't really have an effective health service for maybe 1 or 2 years.
Thank you very much, Jack. And Sam, what about your sector? Could you also unmute yourself?
First of all, for example, in the music business, the whole business of touring has been wiped out at this point. And the main income that artists have is usually not from selling records, but mainly from the touring and selling merchandising. That section for right now is wiped out. And it's going to cause major mayhem to all the artists, big ones, small ones, whatever. So it's a very big problem that we don't see the solution right now. You have theaters, just regular theaters like in New York or LA, that who's going to go and sit in the theater with a whole bunch of possible virus carriers. So it's going to be a problem. So the whole music business is going to go upside down about this, because artists really depend on touring, small ones, big ones. Then we go to the movie business. As I said before, there is not going to be a theater business. It may still survive in a small way, but already some major chains are about to go bankrupt, and they're all waiting for some grant from the United States government. One of them, by the way, is AMC, which is owned by mostly Chinese, who everybody's very angry about with them right this minute in the United States. Unjustified maybe, or justified, who knows. So there's a huge revolution waiting here, because if half of the industry, which is theaters and movie theaters, is going to be wiped out, that business mostly. The other side of the coin is that streaming has gone up by almost double. Streaming of movies and videos on the internet, gaming, things like that. So people are getting used to not having to leave their home in order to see a movie, because to see a movie in the old times, so to speak, cost $65 or $75 with all the expenses of popcorn, whatever. So people are just going to get used to living their life online. And there might be some other innovations, such as virtual reality, which did not pick up very heavily until now. But maybe now, if people sit home, they'll be very interested in virtual reality. So there's some major transformations and waiting in show business, movies, theaters, music, comedians, whatever. So that's all I got to say for this moment.
Thank you very much, Sam. And Antoine, what do you see in your segment? Maybe new opportunities or challenges?
Yeah, so in quite a similar way to what Jack said, this crisis has accelerated pre-existing trends, and this is especially true in our sector. So the legal industry, lawyers and judges have always been quite reluctant and backwards when it comes to technology. So I mean, we are in 2020 and they are still using paper and books and whatever. And the crisis forced them to go fully digital. So for the first time in history, in some places, you had some digital hearings with the judge somewhere in their kitchen on Skype or whatever. And so this is really like life-changing, because justice has been done the same way for 2,000 years. And it also has some impact on our democracies, because how do you translate the concept like publicity of justice with digital hearing? Does it mean that now anyone can join a Zoom judicial hearing? So there's a lot of questions regarding that. And it's also an opportunity for us because we offer SaaS software to lawyers. And so we are in the best place to empower them to digitize their activity and their law firm. So it's a huge challenge for all our customers, for all lawyers, because they have basically overnight to make huge changes that they had always refused in the past. And the thing is that we believe that there will be they will never go back. And we can already see in some law firms that young lawyers say that, oh, when the lockdown is over, we want to continue home office and we want to continue digital hearings, whatever. So this will definitely change our industry and therefore society, because the law is the basis of our society. So this is the biggest challenge and the opportunity for us.
Thank you so much, Antoine. And Cheryl, how is digital marketing booming now?
Yeah, right. I guess in terms of digital marketing, I can't really answer that very well because the company that I work for doesn't do digital marketing. We sell interview scheduling software. And while I said that I was excited about solving problems and discussing with everyone, the reality is that we're facing a lot of problems. So obviously with times like this, it's difficult to sell, it's difficult to fundraise, and difficult to retain existing customers because we're fundamentally a recruiting software. And a lot of companies have started to induce hiring freezes. So that impacts our business a lot. And however, though, based on this, a lot of problems can be solved, at least in the tech space, by pivoting. So we decided that we have to move towards a recession-proof market. So this is done via like finding new cases for existing technology and moving towards enterprise readiness, because all these things sort of help in cushioning ourselves during this recession period. And at the same time, there's an opportunity because as the market moves towards more efficient use of human resources, meaning they want to like make every single employee deliver a lot more, in that way, tech can usually help to solve the problem. So how we know about this is when someone of our existing customers actually told us that she's moving to a new company and she wants to introduce the software to her new company because it's not going to be easy for her to quickly build a team or even hire anybody at this time when many companies are going through hiring freezes. And I guess for the marketing side, it's very simple. It's about creating evergreen content. You sort of have to have a lot of content that you can use in the future because you not only want to tide yourself through this crisis, but you also want to prepare to generate a lot of interest after when the market is ready. And there's also building a community, because right now that everybody's working from home, like even right now, having this group of people chatting together, people appreciate stuff like that. And it's something that they can engage in really well. So there's that. And the last thing is in sort of building drip campaigns, meaning to sort of nurture interest over time so that people can sort of like keep your brand at the top of mind. Yeah, so that's that for me.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. And Jack, what do you think could be a smart way at the same time in cutting costs and boosting efficiency for the teams now encountering both challenges and potential gains from the situation?
Is the question around, sorry, what is the question around what are smart ways of cutting costs and boosting productivity in general, or in the specific area that I'm seeing investments in?
You can share your own experience or maybe observations in some similar fields or some other industries as well, if you have some.
Look, I think the reality is that if you're in an industry that is natively digital, you have an advantage. If you're in an industry where people are physically moving around and physically going to see other people, you know, it's it's tough right now. So the question is, in the latter group, if you're a company or you're a business where your entire worth is around people moving around or going and seeing other people, you have to think can you dematerialize that and turn it as digital as possible? So in our practice, we've turned from being having 6 rooms filled with, with 8 hours, 12 hours a day with different physicians and therapists into an online business. And it's hurt, but at least we can keep the lights on, even though we don't have to go to the office at the moment. The clinic's shut, but the business is, the practice, the clinic and the research is still happening. For those businesses that are much more dependent on physically seeing people, like the hotel industry, like Sam's business, or at least the entertainment business, I should say, the kind of world that Sam alluded to before. If you're in the conferencing business, I mean, the conferencing business is huge. It's either innovate or put a hold on things. And some countries are offering a lot more in the way of furloughing employees to protect their incomes. But in terms of innovation, I think there are some domains that are very much easier to survive than others. The big question that I've got for the group, rather than sort of stating things, is what are you guys seeing, both in terms of where you live and in terms of the companies that you're seeing around you? But how are you guys coping with the uncertainty around the length of time that this lasts for? Because I think if lockdown lasts 2 weeks versus lockdown lasts 2 years, these are there's very different advice and guidance that we should be giving companies that we work with. So I'm kind of going to open it out to the rest of the group, or if I don't know, Nadia, if you want to field that to different people for coordination's sake. But in the UK, the uncertainty is the biggest issue in terms of planning.
Thank you so much, Jack. And Antoine, what do you think?
So yeah, as Jack said, the uncertainty is the biggest issue. So for instance, in France here, the lockdown will last at least 2 months. It's already been 1 month and there's another month going on, and it will probably last longer, at least like some partial lockdown. So I think in general, like it's impossible to predict anything, but you need to prepare for the worst. So we prepared all our teams to be ready, at least in their mind and psychologically, to work remotely for like the rest of the year or maybe the rest of their lives. And you need also to anticipate that. So I saw some entrepreneurs who changed their offices to have like smaller offices, for instance, because they think that in the future, more and more people will work remotely or ask for remote work, or maybe government will force companies to have only, I don't know, 50% of their employees working at the office at the same time. So that's a way to reduce costs and also to anticipate for the future. And then for us, I mean, we are kind of lucky because our customers are lawyers. So some of them thrive during crisis, and this uncertainty is good for them, because when you have uncertainty about your business, you ask your lawyers for advice, for legal advice. And so our customers then need access to the law and to regulations, so they come on Doctrine to have more information about the current situation. And also there has been a huge increase of extraordinary emergency regulation and legislation all around the world. And we also take, I would say, advantage of that. I mean, this is an opportunity for us because we offer a legal information platform, and the law is more and more complex with this crisis. So yeah, I think like the general idea for me is it's impossible to predict how long things will last. As Gianpaolo said earlier, there will be many waves of the virus, and you just need, I think, to prepare for the worst, and which means being fully digital and yeah, stay safe and confident.
Thank you so much, Antoine. And Sam, what is your view?
Our center is in Israel, and in Israel, they decided to take off a lot of the restrictions very soon. So we're not going to be impacted by months. I'm in Los Angeles, but the center is in Israel, the center of technology. And I don't think we'll be impacted that bad as far as Israel goes. Our business is completely digital. It's always completely digital. So we're used to work digitally. We also subcontract a lot of things to people in India that do work for us. Though they do have a lockdown in India, we don't see that it's affecting them as far as doing things for us. The Indians are very resourceful. In California, people are very obedient and they really do not leave their houses much. So again, I don't think there'll be a lockdown for much longer. President Trump, the president of the United States, of course, is very much into the economy. So he doesn't want to have huge times of lockdown. And California is very advanced and we have, relatively speaking, a lower amount of casualties from the virus. So I think that soon they'll start opening up here also. As far as we are concerned, I hate to say that, but for us, the longer people will be locked up, which of course is not a good thing to say. For us, it could work better in the long run because people will get used to more and more doing things online and forget about anything that's not online. So our world is moving into a total, not total, but a very much moving world in online. And since our business is online, then it's kind of going to do good for us. I do feel very bad for the people in the music industry because I've been in this business since I was 16 years old. And I feel really bad internally for all the artists that have lost their livelihood. And I guess there's going to have to be another transformation in that business where people make money not from touring. Right now, that's their main source of income. Most musicians, not the big ones, are usually not rich or broke. And if you stop their livelihood, I don't even know how they're going to survive. So it's a total mishmash here and a total mayhem as far as that goes. But I do believe that in the long run, things will get better. If people can sit at home and work somehow and find ways not to go to some office, they might be more productive. And in the long run, I think things will get better, not worse. I'm a hopeless optimist, so I always think in the better.
Thank you so much, Sam. And Cheryl, what are your thoughts? How business models could be changed to survive in the current crisis?
Right. So I feel at the start, when the crisis first hit and when it was predicted that it's going to take about at least 1.5 years, if not a lot more, there was a lot of panic in a lot of tech companies in San Francisco. You can totally see it. There's a lot of panic, furloughing, layoffs, and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's also important to remember that this is just short term. Things are going to eventually gradually get back to normal, and you sort of need to have the infrastructure to support the growth when that happens. And I feel like some companies can see that and some don't. But ultimately, one of the biggest things that I realized that's important during this time is the government's response. So in having the relief packages and whether they can sort of waive off rent for the time being, it's very important for businesses to stay alive and to not panic layoff or furlough employees, which I think is important because I mean, it's everyone's livelihood. And you can see like in the US, the employment claims have gone up by an insane amount never seen before, bigger than the Great Recession. And so with that, I also see like in Singapore, it's entirely different where the government's very committed to funding companies and employees. In fact, they're going to pay 75% of every single employee's salary. And that's all based on government budget. And so when that happens, there's no panic layoff. rents get deferred, and things just go by as normal since this is kind of like a short-term reality. So it really depends on the government's response. In the US, obviously there are funds, but it takes a long time to access them or even have any form of security to know that you're going to get them, because it's an application process of 60 to 90 days with no guarantees about how much you're going to receive, if you're going to receive any at all. At the same time, with that to know, my stance on the pandemic is that, well, right now we've hit the peak. There are probably going to be second, third waves, but based on all the governors' like sort of response on how we can slowly contain it, with more tracking, tracing, quarantining of affected people and stuff like that, then things are gonna gradually, it'll become like a contained lockdown, like sort of like a controlled, slowly relaxing more measures and stuff like that. So over time, it's gonna get increasingly normal. Yeah, so can't just have every single company pivot to something entirely different, because that's not gonna be long term. That's what I think.
Thank you, Cheryl. And Gianpaolo, do you have any questions?
Yes, I got some thoughts that, most of the comments have been thoughts-provoking. So I've been spinning my wheels. So definitely what Jack said initially resonates. It depends really in what industry your business is, because if you're in a digital business, in technology, in businesses that are anyway related to services where you can decentralize and work from remote basis without too much aggravation, probably you're a nimble organization and you can cope with the not only with the lockdown but also with the consequences of the lockdown much better than if you're in the bricks and mortars businesses. And I think we have a first victim that it's floating down the river of the industry sectors, and this victim is real estate. A lot of companies have their employees that don't want to go back to work when everything will be said and done. They want to stay and work from home. They don't want to work in offices. So there will be a lot of reconfigurations in terms of office premises, and there would be a lot of redundancies in office space, and then there would be oversupply in the market. So I think this will crash the market, the real estate market, the property market across many jurisdictions, and even in some of the largest financial centers. Because I think at the end of the day, people have discovered that even with the vagaries of having to deal with children and the dogs barking around, this is much better and more productive than having to go to the office and commute and have to go through the stress and the aggravation of public transportation and the risks to your safety by doing that back and forth. So I think a lot of the tertiary services activities will be kept. I think probably they will reconfigure so as to go maybe to physical offices maybe once in a week or twice in a week. But I think there's going to be a lot of shuffling around those things. And again, like Shmuel said in Los Angeles, businesses also that are like entertainment business that are affected by let's say having on their books physical assets like buildings that are empty because theaters will be empty, movie theaters will be empty. Even if the lockdown is finished, which will be finished because, of course, the economies of the world have discovered that they cannot protract it indefinitely. Otherwise, there are different risks that are much greater than the pandemic to society. Still, the return to normalcy, or what we knew as normalcy, if that ever returns, it will occur over time of at least a couple of years. I mean, air travel, train travel, even car trips will be reduced to a bare minimum whenever alternatives are possible. Alternatives will be utilized, and I think only the necessary trips will be taken, and both for business and for a personal reason. So tourism is another business that is affected, and again, tourism carries with itself the other corpse, it's real estate that we mentioned just a few minutes ago. So I'd be happy to hear also what you on the panel think about the impact on the real estate market, maybe in the jurisdictions where you live, if not globally. Thank you. Want to start, Jack? Do you want to start?
Yeah, I was interested to hear. I've got a bit more of a meta question above and beyond real estate, which is, everything that we do in wealth management, venture capital, finance, banking, it is all about growth. And it's all about growth that is inordinate growth. We rely on unicorns. Our whole world is orientated about inordinately consuming more of things. And we all benefit from that as, successful founders, as people trying to return for their investors, as funds trying to return from their LPs or their family offices or so on. The meta question that I've got is actually the globalization, the amount of travel, the amount of both local travel, buildings that we work in, skyscrapers that we build, airlines that are taking more people unnecessarily across the world all the time. It is the fuel. It is the fuel for our the success of what we do in the finance world and in high growth businesses. We rely on the very same thing that causes pandemics to explode. And I know this is maybe a bit of an apocryphal question for a panel like this, but do we not really have to rethink how we grow and how economies operate in general? If the risks of these kinds of viruses are this great, and by the way, I think we've dodged a bullet with this one. I don't think this is a particularly bad virus at all. If this was the same fatality rate as MERS or SARS, then that's a real virus. This is a dress rehearsal. Do we not really have to think very long and hard about what we do as probably the most frequent flyers and the biggest builders and the greatest networkers, mostly out of all the people we know? And if we have to take a long, hard look at it rather than just dream of going back to normality or normalcy, as they say in the States, are we just not setting ourselves up for something that happens again and again? I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just giving a little reflection here. It's been quite sobering for me, really, as a person who has gold status on 3 airlines, offices all over the place, and probably the worst carbon footprint out of most people I know.
I feel that right now, the global situation just isn't cooperative enough to tackle something like a pandemic, because a lot of nations are complacent. Like that's what I think what it is. Because there are 2 different kinds of pandemics that, well, one is an epidemic and another is a pandemic. It depends on the severity of the virus. The reason why COVID-19 is so infectious is because it's a light disease. If it's worse, then people will be able to sort of lose their lives in a quicker way.
No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, Cheryl. No, if you have a long latency like HIV, we can all be infected, the whole world, and then it unleashes itself. That's not the way it works. You can have an incredibly bad disease with a long latency, and the whole world is screwed. These aren't self-limiting things. Don't underestimate the power of latency in viruses. You only need a SARS type situation to incorporate the same retroviral latency as HIV, and the whole world is gone.
But there is a difference between SARS and COVID-19, which is one is a lot more severe, which is why it's less contagious. And COVID-19, people are walking around without symptoms.
It doesn't work like that. If you get long latency, you can have just as high virility. Do not underestimate long latency. It can happen at any point.
Also, there's another point, right, which is about containment, like whether containment is possible, because for SARS, it was effectively contained partially because of how like there's fewer cases of asymptomatic transmission and a lot of cooperation at the same time.
Well, my point was more about, should we take a long, hard look at the way we build, the way we move, and the way we grow? That was my point.
And
I don't think.
Jack, if I may interject, I think this is a very philosophical point that you've raised, and it was the topic of my next question, but you've opened the can of worms, so I'll just pass it on to the panel. The question is exactly rephrasing what Jack said. Do you think that the economic system we've created is strong enough after seeing the demise of a lot of activities and sectors in such a short period? And Cheryl, you were mentioning that all of a sudden in the United States, there have been close to 4 million unemployed. I could tell you, and by no means this is an accusation to the United States, but those employees were anyway unemployed people in disguise, because they were really barely surviving on minimum wages that are not really supporting life as we know it. And situation like this, a cause of force majeure, force us to call a spade and reveal the fragility of what we built so far. So I think this is a very good moment for rethinking a lot of things, but I'd like to hear your opinion on that, because I tend to agree. I mean, I had the same question as Jack had over the last few weeks. And even if we do start to work again, still it isn't over. It isn't over because the latency of the virus could mutate as the virus mutates, but it's also not over because our system is the countries are in this series of non-consecutive waves with one another, and they're all out of sync. So it's all scrambled, and this creates a lot of havoc. So please, Shmuel, if you want to say something, and Antoine.
I'm a contrarian, so I have contrary things to say. First of all, going back to England, I used to live there for many years. I love this country. There was always complaints about the NHS in England that is not very efficient, and perhaps this whole situation will improve on the NHS, and the NHS will be a much better organization. So you have to look at the good things and everything. About the tourism business, a lot of people may feel so choked up at home, and one day when they can fly or go somewhere, maybe just drive around, they may go and want to relieve themselves from this choking at home for months. So the tourism business may actually pick up, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it's a very big possibility. The other thing that we must address is politics, because we're going to have an election year in the United States. And I think President Trump has a better chance at this point, but his whole business is on politics. If he shows the people in the United States that we can continue, and the government is giving all kinds of money to all kinds of companies, which some of them may even gain from this whole thing, then maybe people will recuperate from this much faster than it's known to us right now. And that, again, has to do with the stock market. The stock market collapsed. Now it's going back up. And different companies will see their stocks going up, and different companies will see their stocks going down. So again, people will get used to it. People that like to short stocks, which means they make money when the stocks go down, will buy stocks of companies that have not a great future, and people that want to speculate in stocks may buy the stocks of Zoom or one of those companies. So I think that if we look at all these aspects, the situation is not so bad. As far as real estate goes, which I am a specialist in also, you have to remember that when we had a lot of foreclosures in Nevada and Las Vegas, and the whole city was one big foreclosure, that was 10 years ago, and everybody said that Nevada was lost because, everything was so cheap there. I said right away, Nevada is a great place. And indeed, what the government did in Nevada is they stopped the foreclosures, which means they stopped taking back houses from people who didn't pay the mortgage. And within a few years, everything went back to normal. So there are remedies for real estate in trouble. And there's a remedy for everything. And we're human beings and we can adjust. We have huge technology that we can use in order to adjust to almost everything. Again, I'm a hopeless optimist, so I'm saying the optimistic things.
Thank you. And I would like to address our final round of questions. So if you would like maybe to choose one word which would focus our attention in the current situation, more on the gain and opportunities and how to succeed in the current environment and consider it a fast track to the new reality, to the benefit, what that word could be. Jack?
Well, I think we're going to have to get used to tracing, and we're going to have to get used to testing. And I think that's a very good thing to get used to, because as I say, I'm not a hopeless optimist. I'm a cautious optimist. And I think that with what the only thing that could have been worse than what we're experiencing now is that we don't build national and international infrastructure to deal with these things as they come about more often in future. And so I think the future reality is going to be one where we are able to ramp up testing and tracing as needed at a much higher scale than, well, we've never really done it before. Perhaps only some countries have had that capability because they've just always been more aware of these things being able to spring up, like Singapore and South Korea and so on. So that's going to be the new reality, I think, is it's going to be pretty well business back to usual. We're going to be protecting our elders for a couple of years. We're going to use probabilistic passporting to be able to understand who is going to be safe to see vulnerable people. And for most of us who are pretty robust and unlikely to get really ill, we're all going to have to get used to the fact that we might get pinged every now and then to say that we sat on the number 82 bus with somebody who's just recently got diagnosed, and we'll have to get tested as well. And I think that's fine. And I would expect slightly longer queues at airports where they do real-time PCR or antigen testing before you get on a plane.
Thank you. And Antoine?
So, I mean, as a last word for entrepreneurs, I think that everything is about focusing on profitable growth. And as Cheryl said, you maybe have to pivot somewhere in your business and adapt. So yeah, it's always about reducing churn and a lot of care toward customers, because our customers are also facing huge difficulties. So we need, as businesses, to help them. And then it's about improving cost of acquisition, improving margins, and I'm also quite optimistic. Like Shmuel, I think things will get better at some point or another. So our startups and entrepreneurs just need to stay healthy, stay safe, and stay confident to go through this crisis, and then take all those opportunities and back after the crisis.
Sam, can you also address that?
I think that we need to take a pen and pencil and a piece of paper and simply draw the continuation of the situation and think, how can I continue in this world, which will be mostly online? And how can I survive in this world? And what can I do for the future instead of crying about the past and this is lost and that is lost. There's nothing we can do about it. That's life. All we can do is plan how can we continue for the future and how can we plan everything where we don't depend on one country. It's one big global village right now. And I spoke to a friend of mine in Australia yesterday, and it's just like in LA, you know. So it's just one big world. And if we think that way, we can do things better. If we can subcontract our work to other countries who need the money anyways, and work where we disperse everything we do to many places, then when one piece gets hurt, we can survive. So my philosophy is that we have to understand that everything is basically going online. That's life. And perhaps doctors will do a lot more work online with patients. And in every sector of our life, it will be online. And as long as we understand that and we prepare for it, I think we can actually make more money in the future by simply adjusting to the situation and planning for it, and just forgetting what was in the past and saying that was the past, and let's go on. Just like when they invented digital streaming of movies, then we forgot about DVDs. Originally, nobody could believe that there would be no DVDs, but now DVDs is like an antique item. Or if we talk about music, it's the same thing. I was one of the pioneers of digital music when digital music was just a blimp. It was only 1% of the business. And everybody said that I was nuts. How can it be? And now it's 90% of the business. So anybody that prepared for the digital outcome made money and survived very nicely. Some companies sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, starting from nothing in that business. So if we really plan our future based on that, I think that we can be more successful and do better in life. And we have to realize that we are going through a revolution that is almost as big as the Industrial Revolution many years ago. And whoever thought at the time that cars would be trucks and whatever and planned for it, or railroads prior to that, made lots of money. So I think that if you plan for the future, understanding we're all moving online, I think you can do very well.
Thank you very much, Sam and Cheryl.
Right. So for me, it's really just about being reactive. I feel that it's really hard to predict or try to understand what is going to happen in the future or like in the near future, just because it's really a bigger thing. It's about the entire ecosystem, about the different responses. And because of that, it's just important, I think, to keep reactive, know what is happening, and then come up with strategy to protect what you want to protect. That's it for me.
Thank you. And Gianpaolo?
I would leave you with a word today, and that is accountability. Impact investor that I am, I think accountability is one of the key words that will get out a winner out of this contest with the coronavirus. And governments first. They will have to prove that they can be accountable to their constituencies, because the reaction across the board of governments, and we've only seen the Northern Hemisphere so far. Now we got to prepare and brace for much dire consequences as we move south. But already in the north, we've seen that the government, despite all the intelligence and the prediction capabilities and that we have not been very responsive. I mean, we could have done much better than this overall. So I think accountability will come out strong and loud when this is over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gianpaolo. And this was our final address to all of you. Please join our discussions. We have online panel discussions for Startup Leaders Club every Tuesday and Thursday. You can also join us for Investors Leaders Club each Wednesday with masterclasses and keynote addresses. We also have online roadshows, which pitch competitions online with investor panels judging the competition of entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs with their startups to fundraise. Thank you very much and good luck. Stay healthy with your family, friends, and all the dearest and nearest. Bye-bye.